Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another Ask the Hive live session. This is a continuation series that we're doing every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're excited to have you with us again. Last week we discussed the value of the foundations of digital infrastructure. And so we're going to continue to move forward and discuss of why that's so important when you're in business in today's day and age. So just to recap, Ask the Hive is where we discuss anything that's AI based, automations, technology, and how things are moving in the capability economy. And for those of you who don't know us, my name is Mike. This is my wife, Jasmine. We are the co-founders of RevForce, and we just find it really fun and exciting to have these conversations because things are moving so fast, but it's always important to go to the fundamentals and make sure that they are being built and built properly for you and to help grow and support your business.
Yeah, like Greg said, last week we kind of covered the fundamentals of digital infrastructure, just like kind of the basic fundamentals, not really the foundation, but some of the fundamentals that you need to know if you're running a business today or you want to help somebody run a business. You kind of have to start getting some bearings on the vocabulary and the components that are required to connect everything together. And today we're kind of expanding that series into the core 6 digital systems that kind of string the entire customer user journey together. Because we're going to walk through this example of your business is kind of like a house. You can't just build an individual room and expect that that's going to hold the customer over. They kind of want the full experience. So we're going to kind of walk through what that looks like as far as how the customer journey works, and then also talk a little bit about why that fragmentation is causing issues with businesses today. So let's go ahead and kind of jump right off here. All right.
So last week we mentioned how digital infrastructure is, if you think about it from a principal perspective, very similar to physical infrastructure. So we figured it'd be a nice way to start with something that most of us already know or are very familiar with, and that's basically a house. And we're going to walk through the 6 systems of an online business using a house as our analogy. And it's going to be very fun because most of us have lived in a house, or maybe even some of us even built a house, for those of us with a construction background, or, we just know that, every house has some basic rooms and hallways and assets that are pretty much non-negotiables, right? This is what constitutes a house, and there's no arguing that.
Exactly. And so as we kind of walk through this today, what we want to kind of help everybody who's on this call, a lot of you are probably already agency owners. You probably maybe own your own business, or you've been working with businesses for a while, especially if you're like in the marketing side. But the big issue that we have found that's becoming more and more prevalent is that there's a disconnection between these rooms, and that drop-off point between one vendor and another vendor is actually where a lot of the friction happens. And unless you're someone like us, where we come in and are looking at the entire business as a whole, it's not always obvious what happens from one room to the next. So marketing may very well understand exactly how to get leads into a business, and they know how to do their job. But if the business owner doesn't know how to pick up that ball and then convert those leads into sales, then there can become a little bit of a issue between the two departments. Hey, I don't think your leads are good, or, well, you're just not following up on them well. I'm sure we've all heard these different arguments in different departments. And so we're hoping that even if this sounds basic, this is really for the people who are just getting started in entrepreneurship, or those that don't really understand how the entire business user journey actually works together as an entire, operation unit today, right?
Yeah. And it's important too, because even if you have a mature environment happening, there still are handoffs that fail, even from like the sales to the delivery to the support team. Everyone is trying to think through, how can we make that process as seamless or as frictionless as possible, not only for internal operators or the people that are doing it inside of your business, but for the customer experience? Because at the end of the day, if the customer has a great experience and the acquisition of your product or service that you're providing is a fun experience, they're going to continue buying more from you. So looking at this graph, you'll see there are really the 6 systems that we're going to be walking through. So the first is going to be the traffic system. That's going to be the front lawn. Number 2 is a capture, the front door, where we're finally bringing the customer or potential customer into our home. Third is conversion. We're sitting them down in the living room. They're kicking their feet up. They're having a chat with us. They're finally getting comfortable, right? Number 4, the dining room. Maybe you invite them to get a cup of coffee, some water, maybe a small bite to eat. Number 5, the delivery, which is the kitchen. If they want to just see what your kitchen's like, obviously it's always important because that's where all the good food is, tasty food, or the pantry. And number six, support or the bathroom. Sometimes before you leave someone's house, you're like, hey, excuse me, if you don't mind, I'd like to use your bathroom before I'm out because it's a long drive home. But again, everyone knows the importance of a bathroom inside of a living and dwelling place, right?
Exactly. And the reason this matters is because businesses in the interconnected environment, it's not about a scattered collections of tools anymore, right? A lot of business customers, they expect a streamlined experience. Like they're no longer interested in having these drop-offs because they understand that there are systems that can actually automate this process. So if you're not thinking about your business through that customer experience all the way from the beginning to the end, there's a reason why we called this a flywheel, because it's not just a funnel. It is actually the entire system interconnects with the next system and then actually kind of loops back around and informs the other departments. So understanding how it all works together is actually pretty much foundational today. So we kind of want to talk through the way in which a handful of the core people who work with digital systems think about it, right? So the marketer, you may come in highly skilled at generating the traffic and the leads. You help the right people notice the house, you walk them through it, and they may even never have been taught like what happens after they fill out the form. What happens after they book the call? And that might be because your service that you're offering the customer, it's really not, for you, you may have thought like, well, this isn't my job anymore because I'm handing it off. However, making sure that what you're promising in the marketing material can get delivered to the next person is going to tell how effective your marketing becomes. Same thing with a salesperson. They may understand how the conversations in the living room should go in qualifying the prospect, closing the deal. But that does not mean that they understand what the delivery team needs in order for them to fulfill on that promise. And, we've seen this all the time. I always tell people like, I came from the, serving industry, being a waitress for many years. And there was always a conflict between the front and the house and the back of the house because of not understanding what each team really needs to be successful. If you're a product builder, you may focus deeply on creating a strong product experience, but you may not always understand how to explain that product clearly enough for the marketing team to actually create demand or for the customers to use it successfully once they buy. Or a customer support professional may understand the problems that customers are experiencing after the purchase, but they have very little visibility into the expectations set before on the sales call or process failures during inside the delivery. So the reason this matters so much today is because there is the ability, especially now with AI, for you to be a one-man band. You are not only the marketer, you are the salesperson, you are the person who's going to onboard the customers, you're the person who's going to be doing the delivery and support. And if it's not you, you're training an AI or someone else to do it. And so in order for you to train an AI or someone else to do it, you kind of have to understand how the system works end to end, right? So that means we're going to pull back the curtains on this analogy, and we're going to kind of walk you through each individual room, what it's designed to do, and how it connects to the next system.
Yep.
Starting with the traffic system.
So like mentioned before, traffic is the front lawn and the exterior of your home. And this is individuals that, your job is to get market attention or market awareness, right? These are individuals that do SEO work, you do content marketing, you do maybe referrals, you do some channel partnerships, you do different types of media, anything that really paid ads, anything that said, hey, I need to get people, I have to get eyeballs, right? I have to get eyeballs and people's attention that we do exist and look at our house and look at where we're at. So traffic generates awareness and obviously invites the right approach. And it's also about helping qualify the prospects of people that eventually want to come and see your home or your property. And so it's also another thing too, is everything on the exterior of your home. It's the grass, it's the siding, it's the windows. It's very similar to how a real estate agent maybe sells a house, right? If the lawn isn't taken care of, the siding and everything, it looks all in a disarray. It doesn't look appealing, right? So in the business of traffic, you want obviously good brand visibility, website presence, social media and search ranking, advertisements, if you're running paid ads, referrals, content, different partnerships that know how to present your business clearly, customer reviews, different types of public reputation or social street cred, if you will, different events, and obviously different outbound outreach. So the front lawn.
I actually love what you said about it being like a real estate agent,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I think this is probably one of the hardest for a lot of people when you're a marketer, is trying to help the business owner understand that all of these things play a part, right? Like, you can't have a really great looking website if the rest of your social presence looks terrible.
Yeah.
I know we've had this plenty of times where it's like they spend a lot of money on a beautiful website, but then you go to their Google business listing and they have zero Google business listing stuff. Or, like you said, they have wonderful SEO here, but they're also missing any of the other parts of their digital presence they need for it to look well rounded. So again, if you were looking at the front of a house and it was beautifully painted, but every single window was cracked, that would make it kind of look suspicious to walk in the door, right?
Well, and so long as, like, obviously you have a plan at least to replace those windows, right? It's just one of those things where, like, yeah, obviously there's always room for improvements on the digital presence side of things, but when it's neglected purposefully, like, like you got to change it, and you're like, yeah, I'll get to it, then it becomes an issue. But if you have a plan of actually, like, okay, making improvements, then there's a little bit of leeway there.
Well, I'm only bringing this up because I think as marketers, again, being able to properly give the expectation to the business owner why these things need to be addressed, right? I think a lot of us, because we sell services and we have different services, like you walk in, the business owner, we see the entire outside of the house, the lawn hasn't been cut in weeks.
It's like, oh my gosh, you gotta
extra
do
cars
this
on the lot. There's all this stuff, and we understand that is going to affect how effective it is for us to get people through the door. But that doesn't mean the business owner understands how that's reflecting. And it's another reason why using analogies like what we're doing right now with the house, because it is something that somebody could picture in their mind, like, oh gosh, yeah, I wouldn't want to walk into that, haunted house. I would want to have it look nice. So this is just a way of helping to express why this piece is so important, right?
Number 2, capture. So capture is the front door and the foyer. Obviously, most people, when I don't know if you ever, when you invite guests to your home, you invite them to the front door. Sometimes it might be the side door or the back door or through a garage, but oftentimes I say like 80+% is like, hey, just meet me at the front door, ring the doorbell, or now everyone's got a camera. So it's like, yeah, I see you, no worry, I'll buzz you in, or yeah, I'll meet you at the front door. But really, when it comes to the front door or capturing, it really is about, hey, you are a recognized guest. I did invite you to my home. Thank you so much for showing up. And it's not some complete stranger. So capture transforms an anonymous observer into actual guest. And the output there is a lead that is routed to your internal system. So it's like, okay, now they're coming into my house or into my system. And now we can begin the interface. So it is a moment when someone just stops being just a person by themselves or standing outside, and they become, like I said, a house guest. And the front door needs to be obvious, and it has to be easy to use. Can you imagine if a front door had multiple bells and whistles and hinges and knobs, and you're like, man, I don't even know how to get through this thing. I have to wait for someone else to show me how to do this. Then it's not a really good user experience. Obviously, we put doors and locks on doors and stuff like that, but relatively speaking, it should be a simple interface. So a lot of times when the capture system, this includes website forms, booking calendars, widgets, inbound phone calls. Call us here, and then most times it's AI nowadays picking up the call. Direct messages, any type of different applications, email, lead magnet, event registrations, and simple to navigate landing pages. So when someone enters through the front door, the business should know who they are, what they brought with them, what they might need. Obviously, there's a reason that they're showing up to your front door in the first place, and then how you can direct them into the next parts of your house.
And I'd say this is probably like where one of the first handoff problems begins, right? So whose job is it to make sure that the front door is easy to use, right? So depending on what your service is, understanding where that handoff actually happens. Because if your job is to drive traffic through ads to a landing page, but the landing page has terrible copy or it's not very good at navigating it, or it is great on desktop but not on mobile, all of these different things are a way for there to be difficulty for the customer, like you said, to get into the system. So every one of these pieces in the capture system is the first time that you actually get a little ROI on your investment. Mm-hmm. So making sure that you understand how each of the capture systems work, and making sure that you're putting the right kind of capture systems in place for the right types of customers that you have. So I would say that this is usually where the first break in the handoff happens, and it's an important one when it comes to converting those leads into later sales.
And honestly, the front door should be honestly as easy that a child could use it. I mean, how many times have you been somewhere and you're at a friend's house and there's a knock on the door because you're out there for a party or a get together, and then the kid says, "Hey, someone's at the door," and then the mom will say, "Oh, that's my friend Sally. Let her in," and the child opens the door for the guest. Right? Again, very simple to use.
Yes. So when someone is interested, how do they raise their hand and enter the world? That is the question to ask about the capture system.
Mm-hmm.
So in our third system, our conversion system, it's kind of like your living room, right? So this is the first time that you're actually interfacing with the client in a way that you're actually having a conversation about what they're doing. Now, this can be done through an online medium like a sales funnel. It could be done by a VSL, so like a video sales letter as a funnel, or it could actually be a jumping on a call and having a discovery call. So understanding the different types of conversion systems and which ones work for your audience is super important. But at the end of the day, this is the first time that your conversion is facilitated by a two-way exchange. The lead has to be getting informed decision, and the output is a committed client. So this is where people will sit down, they'll have the real conversations, and the guests will get comfortable. They're going to ask their questions, and we're going to explain why they came and decide whether they trust the people inside the house. So again, having sales conversations, demonstrations, follow-ups, proposals, testimonials, pricing conversations. These are all individual systems. And today, a lot of them can be automated online. But either way, you can't automate something that you don't have a process for. Mm-hmm. That would probably be our number one problem that we have, is people will come to us and they will say, well, like, great, how do you convert your customers? And they have 16 different ways that they do it. None of them are documented. And they're like, hey, can we throw AI on this? Because we just want AI to do it. Well, if you don't know how to do it, how do you think the AI is going to know how to do it?
Yeah, because training the AI is no different than training a human being. If there's a protocol, but if it's all over the place, or worse, not documented at all, then everything is left to someone else's discretion. And you don't want AI hallucinating and telling the wrong things and sharing the wrong information. No different than you would a salesperson or an individual in your company doing the same thing, right? Obviously, you want to be truthful and honest with the prospect and having a quality conversation in the living room.
Well, and I think this is the first real use case where people really would like to get AI involved in this part of the process, but it's also the part of the process where it's got the most, I would say, variables, because you're actually dealing with the human at this point, right? Like everything leading up to the, marketing and into the conversion aspect is kind of them self-selecting. But once they get to the part where they're talking about, is this the right product or service for me? Well, now there's a lot more variables, and those variables all have to be documented in order for the AI to do a good job routing people to the right conversations and needs, right? So the conversion system is really asking, how do we have the right conversations and help the right person confidently decide to move forward?
So number 4, onboarding is the dining room. So here, the onboarding seats the guest at the table and prepares them for what will eventually become the fulfillment of the product or service. And this is really to get the client to commit, like, hey, you know what, I'm ready to move forward, and just now help me walk through the process of what comes next. So obviously, the output is to make sure that the customer is ready to receive the value, and it's clearly communicated of how that value will be received or delivered to them. So once the guest has decided to stay, they are brought to the table and prepared to receive what they came for. The dining room is obviously a fantastic place to experience that. So the guest is seated, they know where they belong, and because have you ever been to someone's house and they're like, hey, let's go in the dining room, let's have a meal, and they're like, oh, where can I sit? Or who's, like, obviously there's like a little bit of a pecking order sometimes, right? It's like, well, that's so and so's chair, that's so and so. You want to avoid all that, right? That awkwardness. Then this is a great way of doing that. It's like, no, you sit right there, and that's your spot. That's you, because again, you're a guest at our house. So they are no longer just visiting the house; they are now being hosted. And what that looks like when it comes to digital infrastructure for business is obviously there's a welcome communication, there's intake or kickoff calls, there is an account setup, maybe there is some access instructions on how to get access to that product or service that you just purchased. There's an expectation timeline, maybe a client portal for very unique situations. There's documentation that needs to be collected, payment information or confirmation, and there's introductions to the delivery team. Like, hey, we're going to pass you off to so-and-so. They're going to take it from here.
Exactly. So onboarding is there to prepare the customer to receive the value they purchased. And a customer should not be paying for services and feeling like they're sitting alone at the table, wondering whether anyone knows that they're there, right? And that's just like what you're talking about with the awkwardness. I think a lot of people, this is where people also drop the ball because they get so excited about the sales side, like, woo, I made a sale, that they forgot about the fact that now they have to fulfill that sale. There's a process that needs to happen. And so when you're building out your products or services, it's just as important that you're designing the proper onboarding flow to make sure that the customer is never they're never left asking themselves is like, should I have stayed here for dinner? Maybe this isn't the right place I should be. Like, you don't want those questions happening because often it will lead to reverts or people to leave or just overall have a bad experience before you've even gotten a chance to deliver your product or service that you're going to deliver, right? Mm-hmm. So with onboarding, the ask is, now that the customer said yes, how do we welcome them, prepare them, and make sure that they know what happens next, mm-hmm. right?
And that leads us right into delivery, which is my favorite part of the house, the kitchen. Why? Because that's where the food's at, man, right? We always want to, man's got to eat. And those of us know the value of when there is no food in the kitchen, how grumpy or hangry people can get. But our guest is not, their job is not to follow us to the kitchen and help us either cook the meals or take the meals from the kitchen to the dining room. Although some guests do that. They come to the kitchen, hey, how can I help bring this to the table? No. You sit at the dining room. Again, we'll bring the meal to you. This is all part of the delivery system. So the whole point here is to make sure that the operational engine is promising exactly the tangible proof that the customer has purchased. Scrolling down here. So this is where the actual work happens. And this is where the ingredients are gathered, the recipe is followed, and the meal is prepared. The quality is checked, and the promises of the outcome for the up to date is now being handed quite nice, basically, no, excuse the pun, but on a silver platter to our guests, right, to our customers. So in the business, the delivery includes project management, fulfillment, implementation, production, the creative work, configuration, automation, a lot of Asians in this one, bear with me, quality assurance, approvals, reporting, documentation, training, handoff. A lot, right? Because a lot happens in a kitchen. But again, it's not our guest problem to know what's going on in the kitchen. They just need to know that, you know what, their meal is going to come to them and it's going to be exactly what they ordered.
And I think that this is really important for those of you that are selling services in, let's say, the marketing world or even the sales world, or honestly, any type of service to a small business today, because just like Mike was explaining there, there's a lot of moving parts. If a business owner is running their business, the last thing they want to know is all the other things that came into making the meal. Mm-hmm. They just want the end product. And if you can be providing relief to them, you're going to have a much better experience for them keeping your service. And I would say that for us, like, that's been some of the most success with our customers, is that has been, I want you to take all that off my plate. I don't want to be the person having to do all this stuff. So when you can do a done for you service that you have productized because you have systems in place, mm-hmm. it's going to become much easier to sell and maintain that customer over time. If the goal is just to sell them, hey, I'm going to sell you access to the kitchen, so to speak, and you have to cook your own meals, you might find that it's difficult because now the client has to figure out how to use this. And this is where we're seeing a lot of issues with people just trying to sell people, let's say, the SaaS software. Because if you're just selling them a SaaS software and then now they have to figure it out, well, if they can find an easier way to do it, there goes your subscription, and now they're onto somebody else's solution. So
yeah, and this is a point too, like with the documentation and certain aspects, don't overwhelm them with information. If they want more information, be ready to provide it for them. Going back to our house guests that's sitting at our dining room table. If you cook them a steak and they're eating the steak like, my goodness, what did you marinate with this? What are the ingredients? Then you can tell them, because they're obviously inquiring about that. But if you put it on their the steak on their plate, and then now you come like, just, hey, I marinated with this and this is how I did this. They're like, whoa, can I just enjoy my meal, right? So again, just err on the side of caution. Sometimes and oftentimes less is more.
Exactly. And then obviously our favorite room that we laugh a little bit about, which is the bathroom, because support is all about, cleaning up messes, protecting the structural trust of things when it breaks down. and restoring satisfaction when trust is, broken. It is one of those rooms in the house where it is often not thought about until you need it. Right?
Or when it's not working,
Or when it's not
it's
working.
like, oh man, we got some serious problems.
Right. So you have to have the last system, which is support, because it's really about making sure that it's the first room that people will think about when they imagine a house, but it's not one of the first rooms, but it is one of the most important rooms in the entire building. The bathroom is where people go to clean up their messes, handle uncomfortable problems, regain composure, and take care of needs that cannot simply be ignored. So if it is also one of the fastest ways to know whether a home is actually functional. Nobody needs to explain why a broken bathroom is a problem. If it doesn't work, everybody's going to know, and the same is true of your support. So support is where the customer is going to go if something breaks, if something's unclear, if they need help, if they have questions, if they need adjustments, if there's additional training, if they need to request a change, or if they need to escalate. So in a business, support needs to include things like your help desk, a ticketing system, troubleshooting, knowledge base, customer service, account management, escalation procedures, maintenance, office hours, and renewal and retention. I will say that this is one of the real problems I feel like in the system, one of the weakest systems that most people have, because we often don't see as much value or the ROI of it. It kind of feels very much like busy admin work, taking the time to like document our processes, taking the time to get our customer feedback. But it is one of the most valuable in today's AI economy, because it gives us so much insights.
Well, and things are changing too, because you think like, okay, if I did my job or as a company, systems 1 through 5, do I really need support? I mean, I quote supported them the whole way. Why do I need a 6th system just dedicated to that? Well, your product's going to change. The marketplace is definitely going to change and shift. That's a matter of when. And man, it feels like it's constantly shifting. I can't seem to get ahead of it. The more reason that people will actually value having support, because when you need to make a product update, or obviously maybe a cybersecurity, something happened, then you have to push a patch, and you do a feature update, etc. People are busy living their lives and running their businesses, so they don't have time to keep up with all those in and out of all that information. So as your support is there and you're there whenever the customer needs it, obviously they're immensely grateful to be.
So when everything's said and done, that was the full house experience, right? The customer experience, the architecture as one continuous connected journey, from traffic to capture, conversion, onboarding, delivery, and support. And then it just loops all the way back through, because the customer experience is not just a single interaction. It is across multiple systems that someone is experiencing your overall business. The customer journey through the house may look something like, hey, a potential customer, referral audience, or partner walks through your front door. The people notice the house and decide whether to approach it. The visitor will then become an identifiable lead. The business and prospects will then have conversations that create clarity. They'll come to your dining room, so to speak, and the customer will be welcomed in, seated, prepared, and told what to expect. Delivery will then promise the work it was prepared behind the scenes and brought to the customer. Support is there to help make sure that there's no problems, questions, messes, or maintenance that needs to be handled. And the one area that probably is not been talked about at all in this entire analogy, but is there and is the invisible infrastructure that holds it all together, and quite frankly is why we talk about digital infrastructure, is all the hallways, doors that exist, which is the CRM, the automations, the SOPs, the documentation, the notification, and handoffs that keep every customer from getting lost in between the rooms. Yeah. That is the piece that nobody talks about. We all talk about the living room and the kitchen and the bedrooms and the bathrooms. Like, those are the physical aspects that we live in, but how important are all the hallways and doors and windows that connect everything that we do every day?
Well, can you imagine like if each room was just its own room, and then you have to walk outside and then walk 15, 20 feet to then go to the bathroom, and then from the bathroom you have to walk 20 to 15 feet to your living room, right? Then you have, what do you have? You don't have a house or one building. You actually have 4 or 5 or 6 separate individual buildings, which is what conventionally, that's what was happening. You have all these departments siloed, not working well together. And obviously a 15 to 20 foot walk to the next building doesn't seem like far, but a lot when it comes to information and data can be lost in that transit. Hence the reason why your hallways and your doors are also very important. And how many times when you're at someone's house, you're like, hey man, where's your bathroom? And you're like, oh, down the hall and to the left. And you go down the hall and then you go to the right. As simple as that. Or it's like, no, it's the second door on the left. I told you where to go. And sometimes they still then screw it up, depending on how big the house is, right?
So that kind of brings us back to kind of the close of today's session, which is, it is a flywheel and not a funnel. The house is walked in order, but the 6 systems are not a linear funnel. They are the 6-system flywheel, a connected operating model where each system feeds the next and the whole thing compounds. A great delivery experience produces referrals that become traffic. Strong support drives the retention and reviews that make the conversion easier. Treating the 6 as one-way funnel where the customer exits after the sale is exactly the future thinking that we at RevForce are trying to warn people against. The customer no longer needs to leave the house because they live in it. And if you are doing a great job and you built a very good system, then you're going to continue to get more and more customers that are going to continue to use your services as repeated every single week and every single month and every single year. So we really want people to start thinking about the fact that for so long, there's been so many different tools that people have built all of these systems separately. But now is the time for you to start thinking about, how is my digital infrastructure connected, and can it even be connected? Because one of the things that you just said a minute ago, Mike, which is that you have all these hallways that are disconnected. Well, that's what it's like when you're on multiple single point solutions trying to run your digital operations. So if you haven't already considered looking at tools today like High Level or HubSpot or Salesforce or a handful of other fully integrated operating systems, and there are some that are designed for specific niches, so you should be looking at my niche and trying to find a tool that allows you to get at least the main foundation laid that is all interconnected before you start stacking on all the like specialty single point tools that make it fancy. Because if each department cannot connect to one another, if the data cannot be shared easily between the rooms inside of your business, that little bit of slowing down the process is enough for a customer to go use somebody else's service instead of yours.
Yeah, and to conclude tonight's Ask the Hive session, I want to leave you with this image, and the reason for that is because most people, they can't demo their existing house and then just, hey, I'm going to start building it all the way from the ground up all over again. It's expensive, right? And nor do they have the time and the resources. But what do a lot of people do? Like, you know what, we're going to remodel our kitchen, or we're going to remodel our bathroom, or you know what, we're going to update our living room with new furniture, what have you, right? So what I encourage you to do, really seriously take an evaluation of these 6 systems or these rooms in your home, and which one makes the most amount of sense to start updating, to make renovations to, right? Maybe your traffic system needs an upgrade there. Or maybe, you know what, it's the dining room. Like we have this old china, and it's not really china, it's actually cheap plastic silverware that we should probably get maybe a new set. Or it might be your kitchen. You're like, you know what, that refrigerator is old. Maybe we should buy new appliances there, or maybe we should get a new stove. Whatever the case may be, think through your business systematically and which one of these systems it make the most amount of sense to start improving, not only for your benefit and the benefit of the people that work for you in your company, but more importantly, the customer experience.
Well, I'm so glad that Mike actually teed us up. So next week, Sunday at 6, our Ask the Hive session is actually going to deep dive into what it means to process map and lay the technical architecture. So we laid this out in this example of the 6 rooms specifically so that you can see that this is kind of a floor plan. And next week, we're going to talk about process mapping and understanding, well, how do I know which room I should demo first, or which ones I should work on first? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So stick around, tune in next Sunday at 6, and we look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.